It's 22 minutes to 9. There are more than 3 million workers in this country who work at one organisation, but because their roles have been outsourced, they're employed by another, and so they don't get the same benefits as those they work alongside. It's a contract arrangement that typically affects cleaners and security guards. But if a landmark legal claim by a group at University of London is successful, that could change dramatically. Our legal correspondent Clive Coleman reports.
It's 5 o'clock in the morning on a chilly morning. I'm on the south side of Southwark Bridge in London, and I'm here with Henry Chango Lopez, who's arrived outside an office block to do his first job of the day. Henry, what are you going to go inside and do?
I just came here to do my 2 hours cleaning job.
Henry works 2 jobs to make ends meet. He's one of many workers who are outsourced. In other words, he's employed by a facilities company that then provides his services to another company or organisation.
The cleaning job is done. Now off to my main job. It's 7:30. I'm at the University of London. I'm here to do my job until 3 o'clock as a porter.
Many big organisations outsource, which means that instead of employing cleaners, security guards and other low-paid staff, they pay a facilities company to provide these workers. So, while keeping control over the way people work and often determining their pay and conditions, they can avoid many of the legal responsibilities of being an employer. That can mean far worse pensions, holiday and sick pay for workers. Earlier this year, outsourced workers at London University went on strike and demonstrated. They were met not by university management, but by the actor Jeremy Irons, who was at the university for a poetry event that was being disrupted by the noise.
Those of you from other countries are here, I hope, because England is reasonable. I think it's a good point.
Now a group, including Henry, employed by the facilities company Cordant and supplied to London University, are seeking a tribunal ruling that the university is recognised, along with Cordant, as their joint employer. The union supporting the workers, the Independent Workers' Union of Great Britain, says that there's an important principle at stake. Its General Secretary is Dr. Jason Moyer-Lee.
The outsourced workers at the University of London, for example, the security guards, for all intents and purposes work for the university. The university is the entity that essentially decides what their pay and terms and conditions is going to be. And unless they can negotiate directly with the university, they can't really negotiate over their pay and terms and conditions.
UK law has never recognised the concept that workers could have joint employers for the purpose of negotiating their terms and conditions. If it did, the consequences could be huge. Daphne Romney QC is a specialist employment lawyer.
It would be enormous. There'd be about 3.5 million employees, outsourced employees, whose terms and conditions would improve because now they'd be on the same terms and conditions as the people they work alongside every day, but who are directly employed. And for the employers, of course, there would also be an impact because it would be more expensive to improve those terms and conditions.
Henry Chango Lopez says that for him, it could be a game changer.
If the law would recognise University of London as my employer, my life would change massively because I wouldn't have to do 2 jobs, for example, as I'm doing at the moment, where I have to wake up 5 o'clock in the morning every day in order to make ends meet.
Henry Chango Lopez ending that report from Clive Coleman. Well, London University have told us in a statement that they don't employ any of these workers and don't accept the relevant legislation recognises that concept of joint employment. Therefore, they've not agreed to the union's request for recognition. Well, Hannah Reid is employment rights expert at the TUC. Good morning.
Good morning.
If this tribunal finds in favour and allows people to have joint employers, it will change things what, such that you can choose whose terms and conditions you want?
Well, what this case really highlights is the problem that many people in outsourced jobs experience. Because they're not employed directly with the employer for whom they do their work, they have no real say over their pay and conditions. They can't negotiate their pay rates. They can't negotiate their other terms and conditions in work. And also, they often find a great difficulty in enforcing their basic standards in the workplace. What this case highlights is the need to ensure that everybody in the workplace, in particular those in low-paid jobs, many women and black and ethnic minority workers are in outsourced jobs, to ensure that they get a fair deal, to ensure that they get the going rate for the job.
Does it remove one of the reasons that companies outsource in the first place? I.e., could it end outsourcing?
Well, our concern within the trade union movement is some employers do decide to outsource simply to drive down pay and conditions and to gain a competitive advantage on that basis. Whereas we're saying, remember that those are individuals who need to earn a decent standard of living to take care of their families.
But isn't the argument that, look, it's the facilities company, it's the company we've outsourced to, it's their responsibility to make sure, and that's where the collective bargaining should be taking place?
Well, arguably, it's the primary company who sets the budget for any particular contract and therefore controls how much people are paid. And if you ended up bringing all employers together and unions together to negotiate a fair rate to ensure that everybody gets the actual going rate for the job, we believe that would be a much fairer deal for individuals.
And does it work in other countries? I mean, this principle exists already?
Well, absolutely. You look at most other European countries, and there you have employers and unions sitting down and negotiating at an industry level what the pay rates are for different types of jobs. And all employers, regardless of whether they're a primary employer, whether they're an outsourced employer, have to observe those pay and conditions. And what do we find in those countries? There's much lower levels of inequality. There's a much better quality of life. People are treated with greater dignity and respect.
So this tribunal would have huge ramifications. How do you expect it to go?
Well, we don't know. It's a test case, and obviously we're monitoring it. But I think the view from the trade union movement often is workers shouldn't always need to go to tribunals in order to win decent treatment in the workplace. The government also has a responsibility to act now to ensure everybody, including those in insecure work, get a fair deal and get the going rate for the job.
Of course, just briefly, one of the difficulties with this, surely, is whether you have more than one employer or more than two if you're being outsourced, as to what applies.
Well, the question is who ultimately should be responsible, and perhaps the key question is how to ensure that all working people have a voice in the workplace. All working people can be represented by trade unions and to be able to negotiate their pay and conditions.
Hannah Reid, thank you very much.